KMC HD3 Detroit, KMPS HD3 Seattle, WBMX HD3 Boston.
And on AOL Radio and Yahoo Launchcast. Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky. Back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL. New skyradio.com.
What do ghosts have to do with physics? How does the paranormal affect our understanding of God? What is the zero-point field?
Hello there, and welcome to the 260th edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. I'm Ben, and asking those questions this evening was my co-host and partner in the paranormal, my dad.
Well, tonight we welcome someone I've very much been looking forward to speaking with, a true paranormal and indeed scientific renaissance person, if ever there was one. Marie D. Jones is a best-selling author, screenwriter, researcher, radio show host, and speaker. Her expertise embraces science, metaphysics, consciousness, and the paranormal. She recently appeared on the History Channel's Nostradamus Effect series, has been interviewed for dozens of magazines, newspapers, and websites, and has appeared on hundreds of radio shows all over the world, including Coast to Coast AM, The Shirley MacLaine Show, and many others. Her books include 2013, End of Days or A New Beginning, Envisioning the World After the Events of 2012, Science with a PSI, How New Discoveries in Quantum Physics and the New Science May Explain the Existence of Paranormal Phenomena, and Looking for God in All the Wrong Places. Boy, you could testify to that. Marie's next book, due this summer, and she'll correct me if I'm wrong on this, is Destiny versus Choice, the Scientific and Spiritual Evidence Behind Fate and Free Will. She also co-authored Supervolcano, the catastrophic event that changed the course of human history, written with her father, geophysicist Dr. John M. Savino. Marie, you make me sick. It takes me 5 years to write a book. 1111, the time prompt phenomenon, the meaning behind mysterious sign sequences and synchronicities, and the resonance key, exploring the links between vibration, consciousness, and the zero-point grid with Larry Flaxman, her partner in the Para Explorers group they founded. That's paraexplorers.com. There are even more books and screenplays that Marie can tell us about later, and she's a broadcaster as well. She currently resides in northern San Diego County, California. Her websites, again, paraexplorers.com and mariedjones.com.
Oh, so Marie D. Jones, welcome to Behind the Paranormal.
Thank you for having me.
Well, before Ben starts his questions, I just wanted to tell everybody that I first encountered you. I'd heard your name, of course, but I was not familiar with your work until we were on a panel together on a show I cannot remember the name of. And I was extremely impressed with you, so I'm very glad to have you with us tonight. Take it away.
Thank you.
You are most welcome.
Oh, not to mention the fact you're the only one who consistently agreed with me through the whole discussion.
Oh, was I?
Sorry, Ben.
Well, gee.
Okay, so third time's the charm. We've had several shows on ghosts lately. Well, maybe like one or two, and we're usually disappointed or / disgusted with the answers that the guests have given us. But my dad says you're different, as you can tell by the showering of compliments. So, what are ghosts in your opinion?
Oh boy, gee, thanks for the easy question.
Welcome.
They could be. Let's put it this way: they could be any number of things. The original idea that a ghost is the essence of a dead person really doesn't hold anymore, because there's so many different kinds of sightings that are reported that lend to a possibly different explanation. So when somebody tells me they saw a ghost, that's like saying you saw a UFO. Well, a UFO is an unidentified flying object. That can be any number of things. So more specifically, I need for the person to tell me exactly what they saw, what happened, what happened to them physiologically, what happened in the environment. So if you really want to know what a ghost is, it could be 7 or 8 different things, in my opinion.
Okay, so how long have you studied ghosts?
I've been involved in the paranormal since I was a little kid, just had a huge interest in it. I got real serious when I was in my early 20s with the UFO field. I was in ufology. I was a member of MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, for a long, long time. But I always had an interest in everything, ghosts, cryptids, psi abilities, you name it. When I was a teenager, pretty young, I had a friend who had poltergeist experiences going on with her family, and that was sort of my first in-your-face introduction to that part of the phenomenon, but I've really just always been interested. I've been telling ghost stories since I was 5 or 6 years old.
Okay, so like us, you see quantum physics and the multiverse as the explanation?
Or an explanation.
Well, I think it opens up the door to other possible explanations. You know, why do we always assume that if somebody sees some kind of apparition and it looks human in form, that they're seeing a dead person?
Mm-hmm.
They could be seeing someone who exists in another level of reality, another dimension, another spatial dimension, a parallel universe. It could be, you know, some kind of construct of the mind at work. So we really can't be limited to just the essence or spirit of a dead person. And a lot of times people will report seeing an apparition that has no awareness that it's being observed. And that's a lot different from a ghost that people might report, where there does seem to be some kind of awareness or acknowledgement that it is being observed, that it sees you back. You know, other times people just report energy or plasma or what have you. There's just so many different types of entities going on here. And we, you know, parallel universes, it's theoretical. The multiverse, totally theoretical. Nobody's proven it yet. But what that does is it really opens up the whole field of the paranormal to explain just about everything that we are dealing with, where it might come from, why a lot of this stuff seems to operate on different laws of physics than the ones that are right here in our backyard.
Yeah, agreed. I started seeing that in the late 1970s.
Yeah.
When encountering ghosts who were not dead, you know, people, especially the girl from Connecticut who was haunting a house in Maine while a student at the University of Connecticut, 120 miles away. It was bizarre.
And, you know, another thing that people don't talk about a lot is the possibility that these are time travelers. You know, that somehow we're glimpsing into another dimension of time, as well as maybe another spatial dimension. And it just keeps getting more and more bizarre from there. But what's interesting is a lot of times when you think about those theories, they seem to fit the phenomenon a lot better than...
That's what we see, yeah.
Yeah, than just that's, you know, dead Uncle George wandering around. I never could understand why ghosts choose to wander certain places. It's like if I were a ghost, if I were dead, my spirit would want to go to Tahiti. You know, I would not want to be hanging out in a graveyard. And, you know, why are hospitals, if people always say to me, well, we see ghosts where people die traumatically. Well, whatever. You know, we could be talking about some type of remnant energy. But why are hospitals not just crawling with this stuff? And I really don't hear that a lot. So.
Well, we've been contacted about a couple of, you know, haunted hospitals, quote unquote. But I mean, the entire planet, as John Keel would say, the entire planet is haunted.
Would be crawling. People died in my condo. I don't see anybody.
Yeah. Oh, no, haunted in the sense of, you know, we're all part of the parallel world matrix, so to speak, if you could forgive
absolutely.
that term. You know?
And if people have been dying for, you know, however long there's been humans, if we really are going to go with that, it's the essence of a dead person explanation, well, then I would say that just about every location that you can stand on, you know, other than these remote regions in the Amazon where there are no people, probably has something going on, but that doesn't necessarily seem to be the case.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Take it away. Go ahead, Ben.
Okay, so tell us about some of your cases.
Ghost or UFO or?
Well, ghosts in particular, because we
don't really talk about that.
It's because we're interested in all areas of the paranormal, but any case you'd like, but ghosts in particular, because we've been dealing with the subject lately on the show, and we've had the standard spiritualist interpretation from the guests, and you are a breath of fresh air on that.
You know, I'm not a ghost hunter. I
hate the term.
I do too, and I use it a little bit derogatorily.
Yes, exactly.
You know what I mean. But anyway, I've been on a few investigations. I've been absolutely unimpressed. I've been to, you know, the Queen Mary and some of these locations where supposedly there is all kinds of activity. Nothing. Found nothing. Saw people reacting to things which were totally explainable. Talked to people who worked at some of these locations who said this is just, you know, tourist stuff. But I will tell you this. The poltergeist experience I referred to when I was 15 years old was terrifying.
Oh, yeah, I've been through that, yeah.
Yeah, and I was young, and I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't know how to help these people. They had actually gone to the Lutheran Church for help and not gotten any because, they don't do exorcisms. But
they're not trained. Clergy are not trained.
Exactly. They don't have people to do it. And it's like, we're not going to send somebody out who doesn't know what they're dealing with. Other than that, I would say there's probably 2 or 3 occasions where I've been at a location, and they're never famous, where somebody said, something really awful happened here. And I knew because when I walked into a particular room, I felt like I was going to throw up. There's just an overwhelming force. The problem is I cannot prove that wasn't some kind of fluctuation in EM activity, or there wasn't something environmentally about that room that made me physically sick, because I really didn't, at the time, I wasn't looking at all of these things. And now I know that a lot of, one of the reasons why I was working with Larry Flaxman is because he does have a group, and he and I come up with theories and ideas, and he goes out in the field with his group and tries them out and tests them. And he found that when you go into a location where there is high EMF, where there is, mold or any number of environmental anomalies going on that are natural, people have strange experiences.
We find the same thing.
They get disoriented.
Yeah.
So now, knowing that, I kind of go back and I think, some of those houses were pretty run down.
Well, there was also the infrasound situation.
Absolutely.
And we had that in our own house.
Yeah, if seismic activity is going on, and by that I don't mean an earthquake you can feel, but there's stuff going on all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And if there are, certain types of waves moving around down there, it's going to affect what's going on where you're doing all your tests and whatnot. I am really bored by that aspect of it, only because I think everybody's doing the same thing with the same equipment. They're getting the same results. So I've kind of thought, all right, there's enough people out there doing that. I have a really low boredom threshold.
I know.
To go,
yeah.
See, for me, it's really hard because I know some of these are 7-8 hour investigations, and I would be pulling my hair out. So I found that my place is theorizing, coming up with concepts, ideas, doing research, writing about it, theorizing, and then saying, okay, you guys, look, what about this? What do you think of trying this? How do you, giving ideas for groups to go out and try. And I've actually done that quite a bit with certain groups that have been open to it.
Well, I know Ben's got another question here, but no, I know exactly what you're saying. One thing that a number of things bother us about the current state of, we call it pop paranormal research by feral ghost hunters. And we refer to that because they're using, I suppose, 21st century equipment they don't understand to prove 19th century theories, for one thing. They're also involved with the phenomena, not with the people. And I remember I just don't go on these things, but Ben has been a couple of times with 1 or 2 groups. And they sat there raving about the EMF readings they got while the owner of the house was suffering.
Right.
With terrible frustration and various family problems, all kinds of stress and issues that, in our opinion, were feeding negative things that were going on in the house. And these people paid no attention whatsoever. It's probably just as well, because if they take on counseling people, it would be probably a catastrophe. But the point being that there are a number of people who just shouldn't be doing this. Well, we have to wrap for a break, and we'll be right back on Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on CBS New Sky Radio with Marie D. Jones. Stay with us.
CBS Radio's The New Sky. NewSkyRadio.com. This is the Lisa J. Smith Show.
Listen to Lisa J now at 3 o'clock Eastern. This is Lisa J. Smith, and I am here to give you messages from Spirit. Give us a call so I can connect with you.
Look up to the sky. Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky. Reach out. NewSkyRadio.com.
My best friend gave me the best advice. He said each day's a gift and not a given right. Leave no stone unturned. Leave your fears behind. And try to take the path less traveled by. That first step you take is the longest ride. If today was your last day, Tomorrow was too late. Could you say goodbye to yesterday? Would you live each moment like your last? Leave old pictures in the past. Donate every dime you had. If today was your last day, against the grain should be a way of life. What's worth the prize is always worth the fight. Every second counts, 'cause there's no second drive. So live like you've never lived it twice. Don't take the free ride in your own life. If today was your last day, would you make your mark like mending a broken heart? You know it's never too late to shoot for the stars, regardless of who you are. So do whatever it takes, 'cause you can't rewind a moment in this life. Let nothing stand in your way. There's a hand of time. I'm never on your side. If today was your last day and tomorrow was too late, could you say goodbye to yesterday? Or would you live each moment like your last? Leave old pictures in the past. Donate every dime you had. And what you call those friends you never see? Reminisce on memories. Would you forget your enemies? And would you find that one dream enough? There up and down the God above, that you finally fall in love. If today was your last day.
Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky. Back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL. New skyradio.com. Believe.
And we are back with Marie D. Jones, a paranormal renaissance person, and we're we started talking about ghosts. And Ben has a final question here.
All right, so what's your opinion of the current state of paranormal research?
Something you probably already answered.
Well, yeah.
You want to know? No,
Let's fly, kiddo.
There's some really good people out there that are trying to push the outside of the envelope, and I think that when all of the media attention is taken off, because it's a trend, people will go on to the next big trend. The people that are really serious are still going to be there plugging away. The state right now, I think it's jumped the shark. It's an absolute mess. You've got people learning how to be ghost hunters from TV shows. You've got celebrity being more important than research. You've got groups out there that are forming just for the sake of going out on Saturday nights and having a great time. I don't know if you guys have seen some of the publicity shots of these groups.
Oh, yeah, it's a disaster.
The girls look like they're trying to be models, or prostitutes. The guys are all posing like bikers. It's like, what does that have to do with anything? And the vast majority of people refuse to read and research and learn about other areas of science that might give them some clues to the paranormal. I always say you're never going to understand the paranormal if you don't have a real good grip on the normal.
That's
really
right.
Laughing in that.
Yeah.
But I know some really good quality people that are out there plugging away and pushing and just refusing to kind of get sucked into that world.
We end every show with a quote. I'm going to use that one if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Seriously.
But we just, we see the same thing. And one of the things that we very rarely have these people on the show because we try and go deeper than most others. And
they all say the same thing.
They all say the same thing, as you described. But we've had several on lately who are very sincere and are determined to prove to modern science, quote unquote, that the afterlife exists. I mean, first of all, they're not working together. There's no peer review. There's no control. It's just, do they honestly, okay, Thomas Edison had, 3 months of formal education. But that was a long time ago.
He stole a lot of his ideas from people, though.
Lee did too, yeah. But I mean, I can't believe these people actually think they're going to prove anything to science. And first of all, as our friend Phil Imbrogno would say, this is outside science.
Right.
And secondly, I don't know. I mean, you have to admire their gumption, I suppose. Some of them.
Yeah, their moxie. Well, here's the thing: every year, well, maybe even every month, it seems like some scientific fact that we thought was, set in stone gets overturned.
Absolutely.
Because of new technology, new progress, light speed. It's not limited anymore. We know that from some experiments that have gone on at the quantum level. So if these people are going to tell me they're going to prove the afterlife, well, how do I know what they're showing me is actually the afterlife and not another universe, not part of the multiverse, not another dimension that you go to when you die, but you're still alive,
exactly.
Not a figment of human consciousness or the structure of the brain. I mean, you cannot prove what reality is.
Well, you can't, absolutely. And people should throw Descartes at me, Rene Descartes. And I'll say, even on his deathbed, he questioned his beginning of knowledge, the point of the beginning of his knowledge, which was, I think, therefore I am. He can't even trust that.
Yeah, that's so scary. It's like, why are we doing all this?
Well, it's the motto. Well, just like the motto of our show: everything you know is wrong.
Oh my God.
Anyway, so you get into a lot more than ghosts, Marie. UFOs, deja vu, elements of traditional parapsychology, theology, philosophy, and of course synchronicity, and even the 2012 business. Do you have what might be called a grand unified theory of everything?
I'm working on one.
Okay.
Larry Flaxman and I are actually working on something based on the years of research that we have done together and apart. We're not ready to talk about it yet simply because we're putting together the pieces, but I will tell you this. I mean, when we're ready, obviously, we're going to...
And let us know, will you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to come out like a lot of people do and say, we don't, nobody knows what's going on. But we have a theory that we really like because it could, and you always have to say that, could possibly explain just about everything. But what we're finding is clues and pieces of the puzzle in every field of science: biology, neurology, endocrinology, seismology. And that's what I keep saying to people. There are clues in nature, in our own bodies as well, as to what is going on here. This is not just an external phenomenon. There are things that are interacting that have to be just right in order for these entities or whatever to manifest. So what are those mechanisms? And that's what we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of broad. It's a very broad theory, but hopefully we'll be able to get something out the beginning of next year. Now, I'm not a physicist. I'm not a doctor or a scientist, but I seem to, be really good at being able to look at the bigger picture.
Well, that's exactly what the next question is, because I'm sure you can say the same thing. I've hobnobbed in academic circles for decades, and some of the biggest idiots I know have PhDs after their names.
Yeah, no kidding.
With plenty of exceptions, of course. But I think the problem is Western thinking. We categorize, we pigeonhole, we cannot see the big picture.
Yeah.
We have PhDs on this show who, they know about some areas but not others. I mean, it seems like a real problem in Western thinking. We can't get beyond a certain point. What say you?
Yeah, I totally agree. I've never claimed to be a detail person. That's what research is for. But I've always, ever since I was a kid, I've always been able to conceptualize things, to see the whole picture and where everything kind of fits together. And then I could go to people who do focus on the details and say, okay, look, where does this fit in? How does this piece fit with this one? But one of the problems is that a lot of people don't want to cross their field or their arena and work with other people in another field or arena. There's
right.
Kind of ego boundary thing going on. And that applies to the paranormal, too. I was really shocked. I did not realize, I feel kind of dumb about this, but I didn't realize that there are a lot of cases out there of ghost activity that also followed UFO sightings.
I was just going to ask that. You must be psychic. Yeah, just we spend. People have asked me, oh well, on my resume, as it were, I've only done like 1,200 cases in 40 years, and so it's because I follow up. Ben and I have spent years on several cases. I've spent 10 years on one case, and because that's how you learn. You don't learn by swooping in for a few hours or a day or two. You have to do follow up, and the more you do that, the more you learn, and the more you follow up, the more we do exactly what you just mentioned, and that's find various areas of the paranormal running into each other.
Yeah, and it's so funny. Well, and one of the you just about the follow-up over years, that's so important because we're looking for repeatability. We're looking for things that happen again and again and again to give us an idea of, oh, okay, here's what's going on. This is the mechanism. And you cannot find that out by going into a location once and giving it a one-shot deal and doing an investigation one night and then never going back. You have to go back again and again and again to see what happens each time there is some kind of paranormal event. What are the commonalities between time number 1 that you went and time number 150? So that's the first problem. Totally agree with that. But what really kind of freaked me out is the fact that the UFO people don't want to talk to the ghost people. The ghost people don't want to talk to the cryptid people. The psi people are off here doing this. If there's no exchange of knowledge and ideas, I have a feeling nobody's ever going to figure out anything because we're dealing with very similar phenomena no matter what. We're dealing with cross-gender, cross-genre phenomena. We're dealing with people who see a UFO and maybe the next day have a ghostly apparition appear when it's never happened before. We could be dealing with some of the same mechanisms, parallel universes, alternate dimensions, the zero-point field, but nobody wants to talk to anybody. The ghost people, and I don't want to say that you have to force yourself to be interested in a subject that you're not, but if you are a serious researcher, I kind of think you need to be talking to researchers that are under that big paranormal umbrella.
Well, you need to dive in and look at the rest of the iceberg.
Yeah.
We often use the Mothman flap as an example of something really significant. Yeah, well, weird and significant in the sense of the parallel world thing. I mean, you have not only this bizarre creature who, interestingly enough, when we've interviewed witnesses and things, people who have one fellow in particular who had, Andy Colvin, who had a very positive experience as a child with his Mothman experience. He all of a sudden discovered unknown talents. He didn't know that he had musical talents, things of this kind, that all he attributes to his Mothman experience. And there were all sorts of UFO phenomena going on at the time, and not just these cryptids. There were people who were having poltergeist activity. I talked to Susan Shepard, whom you may know, who is now a well-known psychic and is one of the few whom I will have on this show. Mm-hmm. And she remembers hearing footsteps on her roof when she was a child, naturally terrified, the red eyes looking in the windows, all sorts of things, the Men in Black business, all sorts of things that were seemingly unrelated that occurred at that time and during that flap. So again, another possible indication of intersecting realities.
Or that particular location is some kind of hotbed. Now, what it is it about that location, about the environment, looking at all the different elements that happen when any of these things occur.
Well, you have two rivers coming together for one thing.
Yeah, and also the psychological and physiological connections. Is there some kind of contagion where when people in one community hear about somebody having experience, can they somehow trigger an experience of their own? That fascinates me because I really, really believe that thought and intention, and I believe it's all contagious. And, UFOs, it's very similar. They go in waves, but there's also been a lot of contagion with abductees, where one person reports it, and then you've got their brother, the uncle, the niece. I actually had that happen in my family, where a whole bunch of relatives ended up all having the same experience, and it just makes you wonder: is there something going on here, genetically or physiologically? What's the deal?
Or multiversally? Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Is it just the area that people are in that for whatever reason is a really hot location?
Well, now Ben's got a question.
Okay, so we deal with a lot of negative entities. Have you done any research on anything negative?
We call them parasites. Interdimensional parasites.
It's funny. I've always had a problem with the whole kind of demonic, negative, positive thing, just because of the religious connotations.
Oh, yeah, so have I. Even though I was a seminary student for 10 years.
Yeah, well, just, because I feel like if you don't buy into that particular religion, is it still demonic or is it just negative energy?
We're not saying it's demonic.
Yeah, we don't use the term demonic. We don't have any theological overtones to it at all.
Well, you have to think, if we are getting glimpses into other universes and other dimensions, why are we assuming that all of the energy is going to be positive?
Absolutely.
I would think it would run the entire gamut.
Simply for the sake of balance.
Right, and everything in between. I mean, if that exists here, why would it not exist somewhere else?
Well, what we run into all the time, and I couldn't explain it until I started to think this way, we're totally neutral. And when you're in, I don't know, I think that they're responsible for a lot of the poltergeist phenomena that I've seen. They are totally neutral, non-human, cosmic mosquitoes, if you will, who are just life forms, are just doing their thing, which is feeding off of us and some of our neighbors too.
Right.
That's what we run into,
You know why? I mean, again, if we have all kinds of stuff going on in this realm, why would we not think, why do we assume that everything on the other side, and there can be an infinite number of other sides,
absolutely,
is all good and pure and holy and angelic? Maybe in one dimension it is, but I tend to think, and the whole deal about cryptids being so bizarre and unusual, and a lot of people stay away from that field because it is so bizarre. But again, you have to think, if there are all these other realities out there, let's just suppose there are, I don't think we could even begin to imagine the types of entities and living creatures and even invisible, microorganisms. We don't know what the heck is out there.
Exactly.
Some of it we probably couldn't even conceive of until we actually saw it for the first time.
Well, that's true. Excuse me. We're getting down, choking on a parasite there. We're getting down to another break here, but I don't know if you really answered Ben's question. I think we'll come back to it after the break. But,
okay.
Okay, but actually, no, these are things I've run into all the time from practically day one, and there is a difference between them and what appear to be people going about their lives and parallel realities and just, not seeing us or ignoring us or, I've been related to some of them. My first case, I found out that I was cousins of the people who had lived or were living there in the 1780s and stuff like that. It was kind of an interesting experience. So anyway, we're going to wrap it up now for a break. We'll be right back on Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Benino on CBS News Sky Radio, newskyradio.com. Stay with us.
Doctor, my eyes have seen the years and the slow parade of fears without crying. Now I want to understand. I have done all that I could to see the evil and the good without hiding. You must help me if you can. Doctor, my eyes. So long. As I have wandered through this world, as each moment has unfurled, I've been waiting to awaken from these dreams. People go just where they will. I never noticed them until I got this feeling that it's later than it seems. Doctor, my eyes, tell me what you see. I hear their cries. Just say if it's too late for me. to cry.
Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky. Back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL. New skyradio.com.
Okay, we're back with Marie D. Jones, and we're going to continue our discussion of the paranormal in general, and in this case, ghosts and maybe parasites in particular, as we call them. Ben, why don't you restate your question?
Okay, if you go on to something else, I'll think of how to word it.
Okay, all right. What about you read about so many things, it's hard to know what to ask. What is the 1111 thing about, Marie?
This was actually, it was when Larry and I decided to partner up. It was the first book that we decided to do, and it was actually my publisher that came to us and said, why don't you look into this 1111 phenomenon? And we both said, huh? Mm-hmm. We had no clue what he was talking about. But we started doing the research, and it really is rather fascinating that there are millions of people all over the world who have, since the 1970s, seen 1111, noticed it much more often, and attach some kind of meaning to this, what we call a time prompt. But they can see it on more places other than a clock. You could see it on a bus bench, a billboard, anywhere numbers are. So you've got these people that are seeing these repeated time prompts over and over again. And the one connection that we found that was of note is the fact that the December 21st, 2012 winter solstice, which is supposed to be the moment, according to many, that something tremendous is supposed to occur, happens at 11:11 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah, and a lot of people have associated the 11:11s with being a wake-up call or poking from, there's Facebook pokes or pokes from the universe or higher beings to say, get ready, wake up, prepare. Now, that's one.
So you just made a wish.
Yeah.
That's just people are like, it's 11:11, make a wish.
Yeah, it is a huge deal. What Larry and I did, though, is we looked into that. And, of course, we present the scientific side as well, that it possibly could be nothing more than the brain seeking pattern, order out of chaos.
Yeah, if you're aware of a number, you're going to see it.
Right. Yeah. The brain will latch onto it and actually seek out that number. And it still could be meaningful to you, that's fine. But we really needed to present that side of it. But what happened was the book evolved into a book about numbers and how magical and profound numbers are. They literally are the language of the universe. Mm-hmm. Everything in our reality boils down to mathematical ratios. It is absolutely amazing. It's as if there is some master mathematician that put all this stuff together. Mm-hmm. And so it really ended up being a book that introduced people to the power of numbers.
Well, I guess you had a question here, Ben, on the...
Sorry.
You okay? Here, I'll ask the question.
There's no water.
Uh-oh.
One of
You're
your
allergic
books,
to me.
one of your books talks about the power of threes. What's with that?
That actually sprung out of the 1111 book because we kept running across the number 3 as being very profound to a number of religions and mythology, folklore, fairy tales, science, the structure of the brain, DNA, you name it. But really, in different religions, the way that they revered the number 3 as being the number of perfection. And I had many, many years ago for ministerial school done a thesis paper on Trinity symbolism. But it wasn't for publication, so I kind of had to tuck it away afterwards. And when Larry and I wanted to do a follow-up to 1111 on the number 3, we took that out, we put some of the research in, we expanded upon it, and we really came up with this idea that the Trinity that we all know from Catholicism is not about the persona of God. It is the process of creation. So the whole book describes this 3-part process that is found in every religion, every mythology, every origin story. It's found in the way that we tell fairy tales and folklore, the way that we structure novels and movies and human language, and then, of course, the science elements of it. And it's a really unusual book because it took us into some real metaphysical zones that we had not really gone into before. But the response to it was absolutely overwhelming. So
I'm sorry to say I haven't read it. I'm going to, though. Yeah. When I was, did you ready to ask your question yet, Ben?
No, you're about to start a lecture. So
all right. Well, no, I'm not going to lecture. I'm just saying that when I started my last book, Turning Home, I did a lot of research on what you are saying, the 3 thing in religions, not only modern but ancient, and very ancient. I had actually spoken with an Australian Aboriginal elder who in 7 hours told me more than I had ever imagined, and in 1979, and the Nicobar Islanders and Andaman Islanders, people of this ancient nature, the Bushmen, people whose cultures go back unbroken lines 60,000 years or more. I was trying to trace the original God. Right? What was the original human concept of God? And interestingly enough, as they found, I guess, in the 1930s in Iraq, Professor Stephen Langdon particularly, monotheism seems to have preceded polytheism. And that was really interesting to me. You had in the most ancient conceptions of God a family of 3, essentially a father, a mother, and a child, which was usually us.
Right.
And that seems to have persisted for some reason. I mean, the ancients, as you know, were a lot smarter than we are.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. We're just now uncovering all of the knowledge that they had that somehow got buried over, history.
Well, that's the thing. That's why I say everything you know is wrong, because we're the dummies of the intellectual history.
We really are. I would love to read your book when it's done, and it's absolutely fascinating when you look at, every number you can find interesting little trivia about, but the number 3 really is the number of perfections, the number of unification. It unifies dualities, and that is not just apparent in Christianity and Catholicism. Really fascinating.
Now, jumping to something totally different, have you done much work with cryptids?
Okay, you're going to laugh at me.
Well, we like
I'm a big chicken. I really am. You put me in a house that somebody says is haunted, and I'm like, oh. There is. But then, I sort of kick into my scientific side. With cryptids, I find them absolutely fascinating. But here's the problem. I've spent so much time focusing on everything but that. I love to read about it. Nick Redfern, Nick Gerhard.
Friend of ours,
Nick's a great friend. I follow their work. Those guys are doing a great job. I don't think I could bring anything new to the field that they're not, they and others like them aren't already doing.
Right.
And I just have this fear. Like, I'm not afraid of ghosts. I'm not afraid of aliens. I'm not afraid of much. But for some reason, because some of the stories and reports that I've read of people who were involved or knew someone that had a cryptid sighting, they have them too. So I keep thinking, if I get involved in this stuff, when I was involved in UFOs, I had an MIB experience. Is that going to happen with cryptids? And I really am such a chicken. Absolutely fascinating stuff. And to me, probably the most profound possible proof that there may be other realities and other universes out there, because some of this stuff does not behave or look like anything we have here.
Yeah, so 9 feet tall and 700 pounds. Tell us about your MIB experience.
I wrote about it in Nick Redford's new book about Men in Black, and I had been in MUFON for a long time, and I'd come to San Diego and gotten a group together with a gal who lived down here. This was way back in the time of putting ads in the newspaper to find people. It was before the internet. And she and her family were abductees. I didn't find a lot of this out until later when she was able to confide in me. They had a lot of MIB issues, strange robotic-like human beings on their property. They shot. My friend and her husband owned a lot of guns, and they lived way out in the boonies, and they would shoot at these things, and they were getting threatening phone calls, the whole gamut. Now, we were running a MUFON group and had our meetings, blah, 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 and I never thought twice about any of it until I started getting phone calls. And I was getting phone calls from a male who either was a robot or had a voice changer, because it was a very robotic, stilted voice. And I would have thought, somebody's trying to scare me. The problem was, and what Nick wrote about, this person knew things about me that they never possibly could have known from my past. They knew things that I was doing in my apartment at the time, even though every window was closed. They knew what book was sitting on the bed next to me. They knew what I had on. They knew what time my husband got home, or the night before, whatever. That's when it got really creepy. It ended up that I left MUFON and moved back to L.A., working in the entertainment industry. And the other gal, we just said, screw this. It's not worth it.
Yeah. I'm afraid we have to pause for another break. But
okay,
really,
sure.
Yeah, I can see why you're scared. We're going to wrap now, and we're going to we'll be right back on Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on CBS News Sky Radio, and our guest, Marie D. Jones. Stay with us.
Tried to beat you, but you're so hot that I melted. I fell right through the cracks. Now I'm trying to get back. Before the cool done run out, I'll be giving it my bestest, and nothing's gonna stop me but divine intervention. I reckon it's again my turn to win some or learn some, but I won't hesitate no more, no more. It cannot wait. I'm yours. Well, open up your mind and see like me. Open up your plans and damn, you're free. I look into your heart and you'll find love, 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 love. Listen to the music of the moment, people dance and sing. We're just one big family, and it's our God-forsaken right to be loved. Love, 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 love. So I won't hesitate no more, no more. It cannot wait. I'm sure there's no need to complicate. Our time is short. This is our fate. I'm yours. Do you? But do you want to come on? I scooch on over closer, dear, and I will nibble your ear. Spending way too long checking my tongue in the mirror and bending over backwards just to try to see it clearer, but my breath fogged up the glass, and so I drew a new face and I laughed. I guess what I'll be saying is there ain't no better reason to rid yourself of vanities and just go with the seasons. It's what we aim to do. Our name is our virtue, but I won't hesitate no more, no more. It cannot wait.
Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky. Back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL. New skyradio.com. Believe.
And we are back with paranormal renaissance person Marie D. Jones. And Ben, are you ready for your question?
I think I got this worded correctly. Okay, so we deal with negative entities in our work called parasites. They feed off people's negative energy and cause all sorts of havoc and blah, blah, blah.
It's undeniable, we feel.
Yes.
Right.
So, have you studied anything to that effect?
I haven't, but the only thing that I've studied that comes close is just really the power of influence upon the human mind, the power of outside influence. If we're talking about entities that are exterior to a person, that could be influencing their thoughts, their behavior, that's one thing. If we're talking about entities that are triggered or manifested from a person, that's a whole different thing. That's the part that I've done some research into and that really fascinates me.
Well, what if they're both?
It could, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You have to ask yourself, what is the common denominator for every single paranormal experience? It's a human being. The presence of a human being. I don't know if that's the observer effect from, quantum physics, but when people say things about even poltergeist, we know that poltergeist activity, that there is the human acts as an agent through which the stuff is triggered and manifested, blah, blah, blah.
Well, yeah, there's always...
It's still a physical event, but we're part of the deal,
Well, we're always part of the deal.
Yeah, so, that's the part that's starting to fascinate me more. And this is where it goes all the way back to our beginning of our conversation, where you have ghost hunters and people that are just so focused on the effects, the pictures, the audio, the thermal images, the orb photos. Nobody's focusing on the cause. That one common denominator, that is us. We could have more to do with this stuff than we even imagine.
Exactly.
So if when you talk about negative entities, are you talking about ghosts, like prankster type of ghosts, or are you talking about just things that happen in the presence of certain people? It's almost like poltergeist phenomenon, or because I think they're two different things, but like you said, they could be interconnected.
Well, let's. We're burning up our daylight here, so I wanted to move on to one more thing. Before we let you go, I wanted to hit you with this. We have taken the multiverse thing to what we feel is the next level. As a matter of fact, we're supposedly working on developing a television show based on this in 3D, if you don't mind. And the idea is that when you have the multiverse perspective, and I suppose it has a basis in human mysticism or spirituality too, in the sense that these are not new ideas. When you have the multiverse perspective, your life starts to change, and it can go in two directions. Now, people have read my books. They're writing by the hundreds and thousands who listen to the show because we talk about this, and they say, I've done this and it works, or why did this happen when, this sort of thing happened, or I'm noticing this, I went by a house that's been blue forever and all of a sudden it's red, and I stopped to ask the guy whom I know, and he said, well, it's always been red, that sort of thing.
Right.
Little glitches in the fabric.
Glitches in the program.
But the idea is to get in touch with yourself where you are, everywhere and everywhen, because you are one big person, one big unity. And once you discover that we're all unified with each other in really, really amazing ways. So anyway, that's what we're encouraging and trying to do. But on the other hand, the problem is that having worked in psychiatric hospitals for as a graduate student and as a seminary student, I would deal with a lot of schizophrenics and a lot more inpatients in those days than today, and they were having the same experiences. And I wondered, are these people really enduring chemical imbalances in the brain, or are they actually aware of worlds that we're not aware of?
Right.
And that was often the case, and psychiatrists have said they don't dare say it publicly, have thought the same thing. What say you about all that?
Well, I agree, and I think that those chemical imbalances are incredibly important because very specific levels of brain chemicals or hormones or what have you could have something to do with why some people have the ability to cross between worlds, if you want to call it that, than others do. And what we think of being mentally ill may actually just be a different mentality altogether.
Yeah.
I'm talking about multiple, dissociative personality disorder, schizophrenia, and even something as simple as deja vu that we always thought was a memory glitch. Now people are looking at as possible, a possible of yourself in another universe.
Exactly. Well, Maria, I'm sorry I have to stop because we're flat out of time.
Oh, we'll have to do it again.
We'll have to. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be in touch off the air, and we'll. Well, send us your information about your books and stuff, or we have some. We'll put it on our Talking Points page because we didn't have a chance to talk about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys, so much.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, folks, we haven't got much time to talk about the Exeter UFO Festival on Labor Day weekend in Exeter, New Hampshire, but Ben and I are supposed to be there, and we'll tell you more about that in the shows as we lead up to that. Again, check out International Metaphysical University, intermetu.com. And many thanks to our producer, Will Kosnick, and we'll see you next Sunday, July 31st, right here on CBS New Sky Radio, newskyradio.com. Ben and I will welcome back the sleeping artist, Lee Stewart Hadwin from England. Some pretty amazing things are happening with this artist who paints brilliant works in his sleep with no memory of it.
So in the meantime, tune into our New England Drive Time show on WOON 1240 AM and ONWorldwide.com at 6 p.m. Eastern Time every Monday. And remember, you can always get free podcasts of all our shows along with show schedules and guest information at www.behindtheparanormal.com.
And we leave you with a word from the ancient Greek general and statesman Pericles. What you leave behind is not what is engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others.
Thanks for joining us on our great cosmic journey, and we will see you next time.